asking how you deal with spiders in your house, because there's a bit of an influx at the moment now that the weather's getting colder. I love this from Jim. Morning, Jim. He says, we came back from holiday to find the hall was full of small piles of books everywhere on the floor. We were a bit perplexed, but then realised that every pile had a flat arachnid below it. Our daughter had been on spider patrol duty while we were away.
Goodness!
Oh, my goodness.
Paul in Manchester says, in our house we both deal with them. More often we just pick them up and move them on. Ooh. And Jane says, I heard it's estimated we swallow 6 small spiders whilst asleep each year. I can't cope with that. I don't believe that. 6? Actually, our makeup artist was saying earlier, she's got wooden floors in her house, and she said she can hear
It's a big
spider.
one.
She's got a giant one, and she says she can hear him crawling across the floor. That is too much.
How big is it?
Sounds like a tarantula.
Here it's
No, thank you.
No. Val in Hull is a widow. Morning, Val. So I'm the only one who can get rid of the spiders. So I've invested in a spider vacuum.
That's what I've got.
It sucks up spiders, and then I release them outside.
Yes.
I've got something similar.
But it's just a Hoover.
It's just called a vacuum, and it just sucks them up.
Doesn't kill them though, so they just live in your Hoover going.
I think it probably does kill them. I think it probably does kill them, to be fair.
Anyway, we digress. Time to go through the papers this morning. We're joined patiently, waiting in the wings, by former Home Office Minister Norman Baker and the writer and journalist Emma Wolfe. A very warm welcome to both of you. Norman, let's start, shall we, with the front page of The Times. Tories will live or die by the economy, warns Patel.
Yes, nothing about spiders on the front page. This is stating the obvious in the way that governments stand or fall by how the economy performs. It's the economy stupid, as someone in America once said, and she's saying what's very obvious. If there's turmoil in the markets, if there's no credibility for the government in economic terms, then the government is time limited. So nothing surprising in a way. What's surprising maybe is that she's taken the step to say this, because it's not a matter that she's normally commented on when she was Home Secretary. But I think I've been up to Birmingham yesterday. I'm going back up today, and the mood up there is, I think, anxious. And I detected that it was more about now what's a fight for the soul of the Tory party rather than the election. I think some of them are giving up on the election, to be honest with you. They're concerned about where the party's going. But I have to say that if you look at the election for Tory party leader, therefore for Prime Minister, let's bear in mind that Liz Truss was the first Tory leader not to have a majority of Tory MPs voting for her, and it would have been therefore sensible in political terms, I think, for her to have reached out to Rishi Sunak's supporters and tried to get some sort of cross arrangement within government which brought in all sides of the Conservative Party. That would have been a sensible approach. Instead, she's done the opposite. Anyone who was a Rishi Sunak supporter was sacked. They're all the backbenchers now grumbling like mad, and she's got very little support from people that she's upset.
There's a lack of common sense.
There's a lack of common sense. It's just basically
political naivety, or is it arrogance, or is it?
Well, I think it's
poor judgment.
It's all those things actually, and certainly arrogance, and the idea that she can push through, which has now been pulled, of course, the 45p tax rate being reduced, but it wasn't even mentioned in the debates between her and Rishi Sunak. I think was a serious misjudgment. She's now got Nadine Dorries, who was supposed to be on board with her, saying that she's thrown the Chancellor under a bus. Well, look at Blair and Brown about 2 years before they fell out big time. These two seem to have fallen out within a matter of days.
Although Nadine Dorries calling for a general election,
Indeed.
and I did think, are you looking at the polls? I mean, that's got to be the craziest suggestion of all that I heard.
Well, indeed, they are now 22 and 25 points behind Labour in the latest two polls, and I think the public are reacting very badly to what's going on. There's also the suggestion that we'll come on to later on that Jacob Rees-Mogg might be thrown under a bus by the Prime Minister as well. So,
we'll have a look in a second. What's the Mail saying, Emma?
The Mail, well, yeah, exactly as Norman is saying, it doesn't make pleasant reading for Liz Truss. This is senior Tories last night in Birmingham, basically saying, she's caved in, this U-turn looks absolutely disastrous. A former minister who actually backed her leadership, so a supporter, says she's used up all her 9 lives in one fell swoop. She's barely been in office a month, that's a couple of weeks really because of the period of national mourning. And also people have been saying the problem with these U-turns, you know, I think there's a place for U-turns when you have made a mistake and you're able to say, okay, we talked about it, you know, maybe this isn't the right thing at the right time. But to do a screeching U-turn in this way, for her Chancellor to take control, to have to sort of take responsibility for that, it makes her look extremely weak for the conference. I mean, I think a lot will be riding on her conference speech tomorrow.
Do the public care about U-turns so much as politicians do?
Yeah, exactly. I think that the U-turns matter more politically. I think that people, the general public, accept that if you've made the wrong decision and you're able to stand up and own it and then go back on that, that actually can be a sign of strength. But I think the perception, the communications, but the perception amongst the public that you're cutting the top rate of income tax and you're also cutting people's benefits effectively, they're not keeping up with inflation, is extremely bad. There is such a sense that it's a party for the rich, that all of these measures from the mini-budget. I mean, the important thing was the energy price guarantee, the energy price cap. That was what should have been in the mini-budget. The rest of it, of course, should have been debated with her cabinet, should have been discussed properly. And, you know, yes, we understand this was an ideological project of hers and Kwasi Kwarteng's, all of that, and there may well be a place for that. But to rush it out...
But we mentioned before about political naivety. Now, one thing Liz Truss is not is politically naive. Because, I mean, she was the one in the whole race saying, well, she's got more cabinet experience than any of the other candidates. So where is this coming from?
I wouldn't call it naivety. I would call it something like stubbornness. She seems extremely isolated. She and her Chancellor, in the first few days, in the first week or so, have seemed very isolated. But also I think there's a sort of stubbornness there. There's a sense that I know this is the right thing, and I'm going to double down, triple down on this. I'm not sure that it's naivety.
Well,
it's
that
bloody-mindedness.
The stubbornness was part of her USP, wasn't it? She was the Iron Lady. She was the reincarnation of Margaret Thatcher.
You say anything about the ladies not for turning out.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you mentioned benefits there, and it does appear, certainly with the grandees, or at least if you want to call them, you know, the Rishi Sunak brigade, that seems to be the new battleground. And as you say, if U-turning means, therefore, that you're perceived to be weak, will there be moves now for further pushes, for further changes to that mini-budget? And I've even read in some of the papers this morning suggestion fracking, despite what Jacob Rees-Mogg says about his own garden and happy to have it in his garden in Somerset, could be the new battleground as well.
Fracking won't go through. Let's be quite clear about this.
It won't go through.
No, fracking is not going to restart, and it won't restart because the majority of Tory MPs don't want it.
But also, experts have said the UK is not really a place where fracking, you know, you would be an idiot to be the head. Quadrilla, the head of Quadrilla, what's his name?
The former head, yeah.
Former head of, yeah, okay. Yeah, I take your point, former head. But I mean, geologically, it's not even a particularly safe bet in this country, or particularly savvy bet in this country. So I think fracking is, you know, it's not really a thing to pursue.
I think the summary of this, in my view, is that Liz Truss has got an agenda, but she won't get it through because she hasn't got the majority of Tory MPs with her on a whole range of issues. That's the bottom line.
Right, so
she'll have to change her approach.
So if that doesn't happen, if she puts stuff through, I mean, if she changes her approach, that's one thing, and some people would say that shows that she's weak. If she tries to put it through and it fails, where does that leave her?
It leaves her as a lame duck Prime Minister, with the Conservative Party not wanting her as a leader, but desperately afraid of going to the electorate because they're going to get hammered.
Norman, are we really going to plunge back into another leadership contest after the summer and the autumn that we've had? The Tory party fighting their battles in public. It's just an embarrassment.
It is an embarrassment, but I think some of them genuinely have given up on the election and are now looking to see where the Tory party is going. It's a bit like the Labour Party was, you know, at the end of the Brown era. That's where
I mean, when you say where the Tory party's going, I mean, they'll always say we are a broad church, and we've always had, you know, for goodness sake, for years they've argued over Europe and managed to stay united. You don't see any fragmentation of the Conservative.
I don't see the Tory party splitting, but what I do see is a battle to reassert where the majority of Tory MPs believe they should be, and it's not where they are at the moment.
What was this about Rees-Mogg then in the FT, Norman? I mean, he's an interesting figure as well, because the darling of the party, according to some, and yet number 10, the FT claims, again, now throwing him under the bus.
Well, I mean, look, it's deeply unpleasant and unattractive, to be perfectly frank with you, for someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's extremely rich and benefiting from hedge funds and everything else, to argue that those at the top end need tax cuts. in order to incentivise them, and those at the bottom end should jolly well price themselves into work, which is essentially what he's saying. And this is his agenda, which apparently Liz Truss is now throwing him under the bus. A lot of buses coming down.
No problems with the bus infrastructure.
Speaking as a former buses minister, and he's proposing apparently, which she's now balked at, the idea of rolling back the maximum number of hours people can work, the other protections in law against being sacked unfairly and so on. And she's, I think, apparently, according to the FT, said enough's enough, we're not having that.
Well, the one I've underlined here, apparently he wanted to scrap the corporate reporting requirement for the gender pay gap. Let us know your thoughts about that. I mean, I don't see how that's a saving or an efficiency or what that does other than promote equality. Yeah.
The gender pay gap thing is strange, though, isn't it? Because it's not as we think it is. It's not about whether people are being paid the same amount for the same job. It's how many. It's different, isn't it, Norman?
Well, there is a bit about whether people are paid the same amount for the same job.
Because that's an equality issue, which is different to the gender pay gap.
But it's a bit of a distraction anyway, to be honest with you. It's a minor issue, and really the government should be concentrating on big issues, not things like that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the Telegraph, Suella Braverman on immigration.
Yeah, so this is going to be her big. Everyone has to have their big thing at the conference, don't they? And this is going to be her big thing at the conference. Is she wants to pledge to stop human rights laws interfering with our laws, with our ability, with the UK's ability to deport illegal immigrants. This is despite the fact that she herself admits her father was welcomed to this country from Kenya in the 1960s, so it seemed a little bit...
But illegally or legally?
She was...
Illegally?
She says it's right that we extend the hand of friendship to those in genuine need. This country has always done so. It did so for my father in the 1960s as a young man from Kenya. And we welcomed thousands of people.
Well, there you go. That's a fair point, though, isn't it? It doesn't mean we can't stop illegal immigration.
Of course. No, it's just her tone. She says she's going to pledge to stop human rights laws interfering with our ability. She wants to possibly... The Mail are also trailing that she may want to cut the number of foreign students coming to this country, cut the number of student visas issued. And she's worried that the European Court in Strasbourg are sort of on, have mission creep on this one.
There's 2 points about that. First of all, foreign students coming in are people who become leaders of their country and actually then have an affinity with the UK, and it's actually stupid to try and stop that happening.
Oh, not all of them.
Not all of them, but some of them. If you look at some of the leaders, including some of the American presidents, they've been over here and studied, and we actually should welcome foreign students in that sense. The second thing is, without being pedantic, people who claim asylum are not here illegally. They only become illegal when the asylum claim is refused and they're required to leave the country and refuse to do so. It's not illegal to seek asylum.
I wonder, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of discussion about the process when people are seeking asylum. It can be years, they're not allowed to work, and I've never understood that.
No, I totally agree with that, Isabel. They should be allowed to work, they should be contributing to society while they're here. It would be a bit of self-respect for them, and it would be less problem for ourselves if they did that.
And they can still be, sent away if their claim is rejected. But this idea that these perfectly capable, fit young people are holed up in these hotels at huge taxpayer expense, idling, doing nothing, is just total nonsense to me, and no one talks about it.
And some of them are highly qualified, they're doctors and everything else, doctors, nurses, teachers, who could actually be used in society. And the other thing we need to do, quite frankly, speaking as a former Home Office Minister, is speed up the process by which these people have their status determined. It's ridiculous leaving them months. It should be much quicker.
Longer than that, and sometimes suicides in the interim.
Let's just finish off with Isabel's favourite story of the day, to get the Mail's take on it. Harry and Meghan releasing their own official portrait.
Yeah, can we see a picture of
Let me hold it up.
So this is
Hold on, here we go. It's on the front of the Mail this morning. It says get a grip, but they're not talking about Meghan, who of course has a firm grip of said husband. But it's the way she stands,
Isabel doesn't like her stance.
I don't like her stance, I have to say.
I'm so glad
I don't like the... Oh dear, let's not start on Meghan. But I don't like the way she always holds Harry's hand. It's a very power woman pose thing.
Yes.
Yeah, the pantsuit, everything. I'm afraid I don't like...
What do you think, Noel?
It's a bit like John and Yoko, I think is how it is.
Yes, very.
Do you really think that?
Yeah, I think she's running the show.
Oh yeah, she's wearing the shirt.
You think?
She's wearing the pants.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't think it's a very nice picture. And she does look a bit stern on it, but I don't get this whole power stance thing. I don't really understand it.
Just to clarify, I don't think as a picture it's a problem, but if you release that as your formal portrait, that's saying hey guys, I'm front and centre, I'm squaring up to you. My husband will be sort of slightly apologetically
behind
holding
me.
my finger behind me. It's just bizarre.
This is a portrait they released. It's actually from last month. It's from the One Young World summit in Manchester. Do you remember they came over for that, and then the Queen died?
Majesty died, yeah.
But I mean, the way that it's being sort of spun by the Mail is that they've just a few days after an official release of a Fab Four photo of the royal family, which is obviously King and the Queen Consort, and then the Prince and Princess of Wales, their Fab Four photo. This has been released by the Californian Duke and Duchess, Harry and Meghan.
There's the picture.
I thought artistically the other picture is quite interesting. The black and white one, that's a much better picture, as a matter of fact. And it reminds me, speaking with my musical hat on, reminds me of kind of with the Beatles album, you know, that...
And it looks more equal. There's a black and white photo in which they're standing together and looking out at this one young world. I mean, I find it all rather staged and embarrassing, but the red, the big photo there is interesting in terms of what it says about, I think, about Meghan.
Oh dear.
Come on, put your colours on the mast. What do you think of the picture?
I don't like it. I don't like the picture, but I don't know that we should necessarily read too much into it.
Oh, come on.
Looks more like a snap than a pose to me.
But she's formally
Oh no,
published
they
it.
release these.
Nothing's
they
not
spend a
contrived.
lot of time thinking
I'm
about
not getting involved.
You're in.
Norman, Emma,
It's been a
go and
pleasure.
debate it yourselves. We'll see you in an hour.
We'll see you again at
Thank you very much.
7.